Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your attendance, and good morning to anyone watching online as well. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Thank you very much, Chair. So we've had apologies from the co-chair, Councillor Helen Howell, and from Councillor Harrington as well. Thank you.
And also Councillor Lawal. Yeah, okay. Any declarations of interest from anyone? Okay, no. Minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of August, you should all had a copy. Is it your wish that I sign those? Okay. So we'll now go on to the substantive item. The first one is Care Quality Commission assurance preparation. And we have Sarah Morris and Matt Jenkins, who are, I don't know who's going to lead on it, but okay, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. So I will introduce the papers and then I'll hand over to Sarah to go through the detail of our self-assessment and next steps. So what we're presenting today is an update on CQC assurance of local authorities, delivery of the Care Act Part 1 statutory functions for adult social care. So by way of background, so the Health and Care Act in 2022 received royal assent, and that heralded a series of fundamental changes for local authorities. So it placed integrated care systems on a statutory footing, but what we're particularly focusing on today is the powers that it gave to the Care Quality Commission, the independent regulator of health and social care services, to assure local authorities' delivery of statutory adult social care functions that are outlined in the Care Act. So CQC now have powers to assure how we are meeting those statutory responsibilities. In essence, they have the powers to inspect local authorities. So we will receive a visit from the Care Quality Commission. They'll spend time engaging with people that draw on services, our colleagues and also members, exploring how we deliver our statutory adult social care functions. We will receive a report and a rating from the Care Quality Commission, and that report will be published on their website, available for the public to see. It's the first time in a generation that the Care Quality Commission or a regulator has had the powers to do that. So looking to David, I think the Commission for Social Care Inspectorate back in 2006 were the last body that had the powers to assure local authorities delivery of statutory functions, and back then there were star ratings that were awarded. The Care Quality Commission will provide a rating for local authorities in the same way that they do for hospitals, GPs, dentists and other adult social care providers. So the ratings will run from inadequate to requires improvement to good and outstanding. So the papers that we've shared go through how that approach has been implemented by the Care Quality Commission with a series of pilot assessments of local authorities. So there were 5 local authorities that were subject to pilot inspections. 4 of those local authorities were awarded a rating of good and 1 of requires improvement. And the rollout of full assessments is in progress with an aspiration that all local authorities will have received a first assessment by September 25. So in terms of our preparation for assurance, what have we been doing and what have we been focusing on? So the Local Government Association, very helpfully in partnership with ADAS and the Care Quality Commission, developed a self-assessment tool for local authorities. So we completed our first self-assessment last year in April, and that was a collaborative process with the senior leadership team and frontline colleagues working across adult social care, as well as engaging with providers and people that draw on services. That self-assessment highlighted a number of areas of good practice, and as we would expect, a number of areas that we particularly wish to focus our attention and improvement activities on ahead of CQC assurance. So what the papers outline is this year's refresh of that self-assessment. So Sarah will go through the areas that we're focusing on in terms of development and improvement, and also the areas that we've identified are areas of good practice that we particularly want to show off and shout about when CQC come for their assessment of our statutory functions. What I would say is preparation for assurance is not something that should be focused on just because we're doing it for CQC. Actually, we consistently focus on providing the best services and having the best interaction possible with people that draw on services, carers and providers, and that will continue to guide our preparation for CQC. But actually, I think what this does is it gives a particular focus on and discipline on tracking the impact of our improvement activities so that we have a library of good practice ready to share with the regulator when they come for our assurance visit. So I'll hand over to Sarah to canter through the themes of assurance, areas of good practice and areas of focus for us, and then propose that we open up for questions, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. So the CQC will be looking and assuring themselves of our work under 4 themes. So working with people, providing services, ensuring safety, and leadership and workforce. So what we've done within the pack is we do within our self-assessment is to pull out the areas that we think are strengths for us, the areas that we want to focus on, and to look at what it is we're doing to address those areas of focus. So in terms of working with people, we do very well when it comes to hospital discharge performance. That's good, reducing delays. We also have been highly commended for some of our work around remote monitoring for people, so supporting people through assistive technology. And we're really pleased that recently we have co-produced and launched a new carer strategy. So that's great. And that was a really good piece of work done within the commissioning team, wasn't it, Matthew? The areas that we want to focus on, we know we have a challenge around the demand, so the sheer numbers of people contacting and wanting support from adult social care. There are concerns across the country about how adult social care approaches waiting lists. So there's a big piece of work we've done across the East Midlands, again co-produced with people who draw on adult social care and carers to look at, well, how do we support people whilst they're having to wait for adult social care? How do we ensure that they are waiting well? And provide them with as much advice and guidance as possible, and how do we assure ourselves that we're correctly prioritising the way we see people. We also want to improve carers' outcomes, so the carers' strategy looks towards that in terms of access to breaks. We're doing a huge piece of work reviewing our website, so what advice and information is out there for people that might mean that they don't need to come directly to adult social care, that they can actually use the information and advice to support themselves. And we want to increase the number of audits that we're doing. So the practice audits, so this is senior managers reviewing the written work of colleagues to assure themselves of performance.
You're watching the YouTube, presumably. It's
There's
like
a speaker loud.
it's
So it
slightly.
reads the screen for you.
Oh, it's like delayed.
Through you, Chair, do you want a copy of the papers, Councillor? I've got a spare. Okay.
And we've and across North Northampton, we've been doing a piece of work with Support North Northamptonshire. So this is working with the voluntary sector to provide a early intervention support for people rather than coming directly to adult social care, which is, I think, has been working very well, really, and there's been a number of reviews, I think, across with public health as well, and our health colleagues. Then in terms of providing support, as you'll be aware, we took on the management of Thackley Green, which is a residential reablement service, and that's been producing really good outcomes for people. So people coming out of hospital, having a short stay there, being able to regain their independence and then go home. We are seeing continued improved performance in reablement. That's really great. And we've recently restructured our social care teams. So they now more closely align with the the local area partnerships, but also to make them more resilient, because having reviewed them, we found that things like sickness and annual leave were impacting. So we've made those more resilient and actually, again, are reviewing the outcome of that, and it's working really well. And we've seen improved CQC ratings across the care market. So our areas of focus in this area are around our pending lists. So actually trying to reduce those, and I can say we are now starting to see those come down, which is great. We've got a big piece of work developing an experts by experience group. So having a group of people who access adult social care and their carers who we can co-produce future services with, which is really important. And then we are looking to increase our reablement offer. We have an independent provider, Tavida, who provides some reablement, and we want to increase that offer so that we can have reablement support for people not just coming out of hospital, but more widely. And then with regards to ensuring safety, strengths around the reduction in people delayed in coming out of hospital, that's really great. We've refreshed our quality board and our large-scale inquiry processes. So these are multidisciplinary meetings where we review the quality of our care markets and any concerns that we've identified, and we come together as our safeguarding team and our quality colleagues to review that and to make decisions about actions needed, but also large-scale inquiry for scenarios where we have very significant safeguarding concerns about a provider, again, working more closely. There are continued concerns about the fragility of the external market, and we've done a lot of work across this year to fully embed making safeguarding personal. And this is a principle that if we are undertaking safeguarding inquiries with people, then actually what's really important is what matters to them, what makes them feel safe, what do they want from our intervention. So we've done a lot of work, and again, I'm really pleased to see we are starting to see some real improvements in that area. We're also doing a lot of work at the moment around risk, so I'm going out and visiting all of our teams and talking with them about risk assessing and the evidence recording of that to support colleagues. And then with regards to leadership, we are seeing improved ASCOF measures, so these are our statutory reporting measures. We're really pleased that we have developed the first North Hants adult social care strategy, which has been co-produced across adult social care, and I think is about to go out for consultation. Not sure. Is going out. We need to double check. Excellent. And we've signed up to the social care workforce race equality standards. So colleagues in human resources are doing a lot of data, providing a lot of data for us, and we will then produce an action plan around that. We know there are budget pressures, so clearly that is a real area for us, and we want to focus on developing and embedding co-production by default. So actually that is our normal approach to anything we do within adult social care, is to work with the people of North Hants to develop that. We know, as Matthew said, that there's a lot of work still to do, so our co-production is in its early stages. We're not completing the number of annual reviews for people who receive services from us that we would want. We need to implement that waiting well guidance, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do that within the next month. There's a lot of work to be done around the website. But I think we are taking steps towards that. The annual conversation last year, so this is an opportunity whereby East Midlands ADAS provided a former Director of Adult Social Services who came out and sort of did a mini review with us and looked at our work. She spoke to a number of colleagues, she spoke to people who receive services from us, and she described North Northamptonshire's adult social care as focused, improving and ambitious. And we were also really pleased that she said we are self-aware, so we do know ourselves well, and this is really important for CQC. And she looked at our self-assessment, which was our initial draft of our self-assessment, and she said that it provided an open and transparent analysis of our strengths and areas to improve, and it didn't seek to hide or obfuscate. So I think, again, that's really positive because it shows that we know ourselves, know the areas we need to be working on, and us taking steps towards that. So the ask of yourselves is to note the preparation. It is likely that councillors will be spoken to as part of the assessment by the Care Quality Commission. Obviously, we're asking you to note the progress made in some areas and also our areas of focus. And then we think we do need to raise the risk of the possibility of a rating of requires improvement. We do have concerns around our review activity, as I said. I think there's also the sooner that CQC comes to North Northamptonshire, the younger we are as a council, and therefore the less track record we can show of improvements in order to give CQC that confidence. But obviously the work we are doing, we would hope will give them that confidence that we are going in the right direction and taking the steps we need to continue to improve. As the annual conversations commented, we have already done so. Anything else you wanted to add, Matthew?
No, I don't think so, thank you. Other than just reflecting upon the annual conversation, so Dr. Carol Tozer, OBE, was the previous Director of Adult Social Services that completed what was in effect a mock CQC assessment for us at North Northamptonshire. So I think for us incredibly reassuring to have that independent assessment, engagement with people that draw on services, unpaid carers, colleagues working in frontline services, as well as colleagues from partner agencies such as Integrated Care Board and independent providers. So really wide-ranging engagement to test out that self-assessment, so to get that feedback that our internal assessment of our practice and areas that we needed to focus on was accurate and reflective of where we are as a local authority, reassuring and positive. I think it shows a maturity in our understanding of ourselves in how we discharge our statutory functions. So I think that's the only other thing I'd add before we pause, Chair, and open up for questions, if that's okay.
Thank you very much. Just quickly before I pass it on, do you have any idea when the CQC are coming and how much notice do you get?
So the short answer is no. We have no direct indication of when they will come. They will give us up to 3 months' notice, I believe, of their intention for a site visit. And that will be so we can complete an information return. So they'll be guided by our performance data and other bits of information that we put into that return to guide their on-site activity and the people that they particularly wish to engage with and the types of questions that they particularly wish to ask. As I said, CQC had indicated an ambition to have all assessments done to give a benchmark of quality in terms of local authorities' practice by September 25. I think that's ambitious, given the number of assessments that they've completed to date. What CQC have been very open about is they would avoid election periods. So for us, I think that means that it will either be early in 2025 or later in 2025. But that's sort of crystal ball gazing. It's a guess. So the honest answer is no, we don't know for sure when they will come, but it will be in the near future.
Thank you. I think it's quite comforting that they give you 3 months' notice, because that there's a lot of preparation work to do, even though you've obviously done a lot. Do you have any questions or comments from the floor? Councillor Roberts.
Well, I'm very pleased, as anybody who's heard me talk about this before, that we've got a plan, that we're developing a plan, and also that we're providing leadership as well. I think that's really important, and making sure that we focus on the right things. I would like to just ask a question on what worries me is how we can weave in housing into this whole thing. And in particular, I get very concerned about the somebody coming out of hospital, let's say, and needs money spent on their flat, which they don't own and isn't in public ownership. How do we cope with things like that? If I may, Chair.
Thank you. And thank you. Some really helpful questions there, Councillor Roberts. So I'll take the last question first. So around adaptations to property. Sometimes it's not possible to undertake the adaptations prior to someone coming out of hospital. However, we do have an occupational therapy service which will assess for adaptations, and then we have a process known as the Disabled Facilities Grant, which enables us to put capital funding into making adaptations to privately owned properties. What it doesn't enable us to do is use DFGs in our own housing stock. So if someone lives in a council property owned by the council, then that has to be done through the council's own HRA capital programme to make those adaptations. So there is a process there. I think the upper limit for DFG, I'm looking to colleagues, I'm going to say it's 40,000. It might be 30, but I think it's 40,000. But then we have a discretion for an additional 10,000 above that. To be fair, it's been that amount for probably about 15 years. And it doesn't really represent what it can take to make some of those adaptations to those properties. So there is calls on government to review the statutory upper limit, but that doesn't stop us as a local authority working with our ICB to widen the discretionary limits that we have around it. But what we need to do then is make sure that we've got the right governance in place for decision making around that. On the working closer with housing, absolutely. So in development of our housing strategy, there's ongoing discussions between our commissioning functions, so Matt and Sarah. Sorry, two Sarahs there. So Sarah with the green top on, so Sarah Buswell-Jones. That will also look at things like the specialised accommodation that we need. So it will look at demands of sheltered accommodation, extra care accommodation that we need, but also if we are expecting quite a high number of young people, so people coming through transition, how do we start getting ahead of that and planning for those young people becoming 18 and saying, I want my own front door or I want some shared accommodation. So there's ongoing strategies to develop that with housing. And I think that will become more apparent once we start consulting on our housing strategy moving forward.
I may, Chair, just to say, whisper it, it's gossamer thin. But we do need, as part of the plan, to start to have coming into this our stock of housing, houses for life on a regular basis. We need that, I would suggest to everybody here today.
So anything that we buy from a new build perspective, so we have a bit of a mixed model with regards to stock that we're bringing into our HRA. There's a couple of ways that we do it. So on right to buys, we have the first say on whether we wish to buy that property back in. Clearly, a lot of those properties are perhaps not to the standard that we would expect them to be homes for life. But any new builds have to have certain things built into them that enable us to make adaptations much easier at the time where you potentially need to. So the sorts of lintels that are used around doorways allow things like ceiling track hoists to be installed. So we're making sure on any of our new build properties that we buy in that those are built into the spec to enable us to make very quick adaptations, so that someone, if they live in there and they had, for example, a stroke and suddenly were unable to mobilise needed lifting aids, that you can make very quick adaptations to those properties. We're also trying to make sure that properties that we buy have bigger doorways, bigger turning spaces, so they're already ready for people if they do have wheelchair needs as well.
Thank you, Chair. I could say just one very quick thing, seeing as how nobody else has put a hand up yet. I'm sure they will soon. That as people get older, as they come along in life, if somebody comes along and helps them, then it uplifts their life and their life experience. And all we're talking about here is plain common sense. Shirley will tell you that I've got a history when it comes to local strategic partnership. It was a Tony Blair idea. I don't care. A good idea is a good idea. Let's bring the voluntary. I heard somebody say that we've got the voluntary sector with us. You put £1 into that area and they'll give you back £4. It's great. It's good economics as well. It's just the right thing to do. I'm very excited by the fact that we've got a plan and we're showing leadership. Long may it last. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And can I first apologise for the computer going off during your presentation? No, I've got a lot to learn on trying to be paper free. But there's a lot of work went into this, you can tell that. And I'm glad that the self-assessment is honest and open. I think that's so important that we are going to move forward and improve the areas we have to do. So I'm very pleased that we mentioned that and it is there. When it comes to leadership, it's in building that trust, especially in, I attended in East Northants just the other day, a sort of conversation with the voluntary sector on day services and support services. And there wasn't a great turnout. It's about quality, and the ones that do turn out, and part of that could be down to they still don't get us yet. We haven't built that relationship up yet. And I think we're working extremely hard on that going forward, but it's so important when we do build the relationships with the voluntary sector. When we say we're going to do something, we do it, and we do it in a timely manner, which doesn't always happen in local government, unfortunately, for many different reasons, including budgets, which is extremely difficult in this area. I recognise that. And you talked about improving the website as a key thing. I would also suggest that we improve the telephone communications between our service users and the council itself, because a lot of people I represent struggle to get through when they really want that help, and they'll come to me or another council and ask them to do that. So that's key, that communications thing, if we able to get. But when we do have an inspection, I can imagine the CQC are not going to take too much into consideration that we're a new council. We've been here 3 years. I don't think they won't take that as an excuse, will they? They'll be saying you should be doing this and you should be doing that. But we have came in. I recognise from the own county council where we didn't have some great CQC inspections in the past. We have came a long way and there's been a lot of improvement. There's still a little bit to go. You've recognised that, and I'm sure we're all here to support that going forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor McGee. David, did you want to come in on something?
Absolutely. So if I can just respond to Councillor Roberts, just with regards to absolutely support Northants, I think is something that's positive. There's been some really good outcomes, but is it seeing enough people? I think is probably one of the questions that we've got at the moment, and that we need to talk to them about. Well, how do we get that working better in that sense? There's also that bit. So whilst you've talked about strategic partnerships, we are really trying to push our local area partnerships as well, recognising that communities know their communities best, and they may well, with a little bit of facilitation from us or potentially some funding, be able to solve some of the problems that we've got, particularly in some of our more isolated communities where it's perhaps more difficult for people to access public services, to enable them to get into contact with that. Absolutely take Councillor McGee's points around funding. I think certainly some of our early discussions with the Support Northants was very much, actually we did a very similar programme to this between 2014 2016, and then the funding was cut off for that. So how do we get continuity in funding moving forward, which again is a combination of conversations that need to happen between ourselves, public health, and that wider council approach to how do we do business with the voluntary sector, because absolutely, I don't know what the current analysis is, but 1 in 4 probably seems quite conservative for every pound spent in the voluntary sector. But, yeah, yeah, I think it's about 1 in 7. So, you know, it's no, but you're absolutely right. It is part of that. We need to be quite bold and we need to recognise that you have to take some chances and invest in those voluntary sector organisations to see benefits and reduction in demand in our statutory services moving forward.
Yeah. Do you,
I like the idea of going very local. In all of the things that I've done over the years and years and years, people like to have something that's in their area where they live. And I think the take-up will be better and the outcomes will, I would have thought, would be better if we do focus on that, and we do need to keep that local touch. It's no good having a Northamptonshire approach. Yes, you can have a strategic Northamptonshire approach, but when it comes to delivery on some of the issues that communities face, just down the road's a great place to be.
Thank you very much. I was going to bring up the local partnerships. David mentioned it, and you know, they are the ideal of keeping things local, getting people together on the ground, and it's all agencies. It's the voluntary sector, but it's also health, fire, police, lots and lots of different agencies, and we started out, and now we're refining some of that. So some like the local area partnerships, what was called the Community Wellbeing Forum, now been renamed Place-Based Partnerships. The refining, we had a workshop this week trying to refine the thinking and who comes to them, you know, what their priorities are. But the priorities are set locally, and so each of the areas have got their own local area partnership, and they are setting their own priorities for their locality. So we have 7 of those, and you know, that does allow us to pick up the things that are particularly of interest in their area. But also Support Northamptonshire. It was quite difficult to get the funding for it, but it is a pilot, and so they're now evaluating that. And after we've done the evaluation, then I'm hoping that we can work out future funding for that ongoing, because they are, if you look at any of their case studies, they're looking at things as holistically. Somebody might present with a problem, but they've got perhaps a housing problem and a health problem and you know, all sorts of things, and they're bringing together all the agencies rather than having to be fobbed off with, no, you've got to go to that agency and then that one in order to solve all their problems. So, and that is helping keep people out of care, which, you know, obviously have a great pressure and not only funding pressure, but, you know, space, time, management time, etc. So if we can deal with people and do the early prevention and keeping people out of care as long as possible, keeping them in their own home as long as possible, then that is absolutely ideal. Councillor McGee.
Thanks, Stuart. I couldn't agree with more with that. There's some important things that, having chaired a health and wellbeing board for many years under the old councils, the big issue then, and still is, you can't have everybody on board. You have representations from each area, whether it's the voluntary sector or the hospitals or whoever it may be. It's where we could never get our thing right was to make sure that the information was passed back to everyone. So you have one representation from the voluntary sector, maybe two, but unless they're feeding that back to the whole of the voluntary sector, which unfortunately doesn't happen, and then they still do not feel part of that. And it's finding, and we discussed this the other day actually at a workshop, but it's finding that way of how we involve and get them that information back that's been discussed so they feel part of that. Otherwise they just feel distant. Does that make sense?
I think it's difficult enough getting that back.
I'm not saying it's easy, but it's something that they've been asking for a long time, and we never found an answer for it when I was chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board. We tried, but we never found a true answer for it. So it's not easy to do, and I admit that absolutely. The other one that they ask of the EPs is to know the risk of a rating. I'd be extremely disappointed given the hard work that the social care work staff has been doing the last 3 years and continue to do, if we do require improvement, because I know there's a lot of good work in there, and we've got maybe about a year before we get that inspection, so we have time to ensure that we do at least be good, and I really hope that's what comes from it, at least.
As far as getting the information down, I think you've got to have the right people around the table. But as you say, you've got to cascade that idea down. So if you've got someone from a very big organisation, that is probably quite difficult. But with the voluntary sector, it's so vast and so fragmented. I know they have their sort of organisations that bring them together. So I think we have to use those sort of organisations to help get the word out to other people, because we couldn't possibly correspond with every single small charity or organisation. Shelley, would like to come in.
Just a couple of points to add to that. I think you're right, Councillor McGee, the voluntary sector is quite disparate, but what we've seen with the LAPS and the development of the LAPS, and now going forward through the place-based partnerships, we have seen much more coherence in the sector, and they're much more they are working together much more, and they're much more aware of what's going on, and we as a local authority are working much closer with them, and I think that will be good for driving forward change in the future. And the other thing I wanted to just touch on was the SNN. There is a piece of work evaluating that, and some of the case studies, as Councillor Mercer said, are phenomenal, the complexity of lives and how they're able to unpick that and support people. So what we would be saying is it's not just the council that we would be looking to fund a service like that, because the impact on the police, on the acute hospitals, although we've not been able to establish that as clearly as we would like. So it's a system conversation in terms of that early intervention and prevention, and that's what we would be keen to have going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, some of the funding for that first year has come from things like housing associations, not just the big sort of integrated care board and council. So any other comments, anyone? Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It's really interesting to see the amount of work that's going on and the preparation. And as you said, it's not just preparation for the CQC for the sake of passing the exam at the end of it. It is to create a really good organisation that looks after our residents when they need the help. So thank you very much for all the hard work that you put in with that. So we'll now move on to the next item, which again I'll pass to Matthew Jenkins, which is Commissioning and Performance, North Northamptonshire Care Market Quality. So over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. So before I move through the papers, just by way of background, 'cause one of the things that we particularly focus on in this update is using CQC ratings for independent providers as a proxy for quality, and we describe a positive trend in change of ratings that we've observed. But I think helpful for us just to reflect on the national position with the Care Quality Commission in terms of their inspection priorities and approach to transformation. So in March 2020, CQC paused their routine approach to inspections because of the COVID pandemic. So the routine approach to inspections was that providers were rated based on frequency rules. So if a service was rated as inadequate, it would be re-inspected within 6 months. If it was rated as requires improvement within a year, good and outstanding 18 to 24 months. There were set frequencies, so there was a routine and rhythm to inspections for independent providers. CQC implemented a new strategy with ambitions to move towards being more data and intelligence-led and moving away from frequency rules to inspection. And because of some of the challenges posed, as we're very well aware, by the COVID pandemic, prioritised inspections based on risk and information of concern, and that has naturally, nationally, and to some extent regionally, influenced a downturn in the ratings profile within the adult social care sector, because a priority for CQC hasn't been to go back and reflect improvement in ratings of providers. There's been a national review conducted by Dr. Penny Nash that was published recently, commenting on CQC's implementation of their new strategy and transformation using a single assessment framework that was critical. So CQC are reflecting upon that approach to inspections now. So I think just helpful by way of context before I move into the local position across Northamptonshire. So the papers that we've shared, Chair, go through the current position of the provider market, our approach to quality assurance and supporting improvement both within our in-house adult social care services and the external care market. So in terms of the external care market, locations registered with CQC, so they are services providing a regulated activity, which is generally either personal care, so support in somebody's own home, or accommodation with personal care, so residential or nursing care homes. There are 278 registered locations with the Care Quality Commission. I should point out that day services are not CQC registered services because they're not providing a regulated activity. So within the papers you'll note a difference between the figure of 278 services registered with CQC and the number of services that we contract with and quality monitor, and that's what drives that variation across those two numbers. So within commissioning and performance, we have a quality team. So that's made up by a team of colleagues who have primarily either worked in registered services, worked as registered managers or as social workers, and they're a team of colleagues that go out and visit our contracted providers as a minimum of annually and complete quality assurance visits. And those visits are very much focused on people's experience of drawing on care services. So we're really clear when we do those visits, we don't want people going into the office and sitting with the registered manager just looking at paperwork and care plans and policies. We want people talking to people that are living and receiving care and support in that service. We want people sat in the lounge observing people's experience of living in that service, and we want our teams to be speaking with people and relatives to really understand what somebody's experience of drawing on this service like, as well as clearly looking at processes and procedures and ways of working. Are there safe ways of working in place? And that is our approach to quality monitoring. So we are really clear that we work in partnership with our contracted care providers, and we're confident that that's what's driving the improvement in the ratings profile that we're observing. So across Northamptonshire, our independent market is largely weighted to smaller and independent providers, and that means that approach to partnership, working and guiding improvement is really important. So we're not working with as many bigger national providers where you might have a meeting if you have concerns and say, well, you need to bring in your team of improvement specialists that you have, because they will have a national team. We're working with smaller and independent providers where we're working alongside them, we're guiding and supporting improvement, and it's that approach that is now paying dividends in terms of the improving CQC ratings profile that we're observing. So we have a consistent approach to working with providers. We implemented a new quality framework towards the end of 2022, and within the papers you'll see that we've reviewed that with providers as well and received some really good feedback about providers' experience of working with and contracting with us. Within our internal provider services, our quality team visit our services on a monthly basis. So that's our short break service for younger adults based in Corby Pine Lodge, our home care service for younger adults, which is our specialist support service based at Da Vinci Court, and our building and community-based reablements. That's our reablement service that supports people in their own homes, and then Thackley Green as well. And we can see that the ratings profile shown on page 70 of the pack. So we have one large block contract with an independent provider, so Shaw Healthcare, which is a PPP contract for 250 residential beds across 6 services in Northamptonshire. All of those services are rated as good with the Care Quality Commission, which is incredibly positive. And we have a contract manager and our quality team that works very closely with Shaw Healthcare to support them to provide really good quality support to people drawing on those services. So the independent care market, so we contract with 352 providers, so that's the difference between the CQC registered providers and the other providers that aren't providing a regulated activity. So each quality officer within our quality team holds a portfolio of providers, and that's so that they can get to know services, get to know registered managers, really understand those providers and build up a really good relationship where we can have honest conversations and providers feel confident in approaching us proactively and saying, we're having this challenge at the moment, can you share any expertise, provide any support to help us to manage that? And it's that partnership approach that's really important and is positive. So the quality team activity, so in court, well, from May, June and July of this year, we've conducted 123 visits to contracted providers, and those visits are a mixture of welcome visits to providers who are newly contracting with us, full monitoring visits, which would be an intensive visit, really engaging with people that draw on services, looking across the whole sphere of what a service is providing to understand the quality in people's experience, and then crucially action plan reviews. So when we complete a full monitoring visit, if we identify areas where we think improvements are required, we develop an action plan which sets out clear steps that we expect the provider to do to improve people's experience of drawing on that service. But then we go back and we make sure that those actions have been completed and provide support to providers to understand the importance of the action and what they need to do to meet the requirements there. And then where we receive information of concern, which could be through a safeguarding notification, it could be through a review that's been completed for an individual, or it could be through information from a partner agency such as the ICB or the Care Quality Commission, for example. We would complete responsive welfare checks to see are there any risks here where we need to provide immediate support or take immediate action to ensure people's safety within services. So those 123 visits that we've completed are a mixture of those. So the ratings profile using CQC ratings as a proxy for quality across Northamptonshire is improving positively. So I was kindly asked to go and present at a conference earlier this year and happened to be presenting with one of the deputy directors at CQC, one of the regional leads, who came across and asked, what is it you're doing for quality in Northamptonshire at the moment? Because he'd been at a meeting where we had been identified as an outlier in that our ratings profile was increasing at the most rapid rate across the Midlands. So again, incredibly positive for us here in Northamptonshire. So regionally, we now benchmark benchmark 35th compared to other unitary authorities. 12 months ago, we benchmarked 56th. So significant improvement. And again, I reflect upon the background I shared. That's in the context of it not being a priority for CQC to inspect improvement, and their inspections have naturally been weighted to either responding to information of concern or a first inspection. That's for residential nursing care services in particular. So community care quality. So this is services that provide the regulated activity of personal care, which is domiciliary care or supported living primarily. You will note from the pack that 42% of services are rated as good and outstanding, but I'd highlight that 49% of services haven't yet received an inspection from CQC, so don't have a rating at the moment, and that's because they are newly registered. Historically, newly registered would mean registered within the last 12 months, so CQC would inspect within 12 months of being registered, generally not before 6 months, because providers need a track record of doing things for CQC to be able to inspect and understand what's the quality of this service like. However, a number of those services have been operating for 2, if not 3 years now. We have visited them, we've completed our quality monitoring visits, and we believe that the quality of those services is primarily good. So we're confident that when CQC go and inspect them, that ratings profile will improve. If we slightly change the question and say, well, of the locations inspected, what proportion of those services are rated as good and outstanding, is significantly over 80%. I don't know if we've included the figure in this pack, but from
87.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. So I think that's probably the figure for us to focus on, and I think we look at the 49% of the market that isn't yet inspected as our opportunity to improve that overall ratings profile, and that's where, again, it's incredibly important that our quality team continues to work proactively and in partnership with that sector of the market to make sure that people have a choice of really good high-quality services to draw upon when they need to. So I think they are the main bits that I would draw out from the pack, Chair. So you'll note that there is feedback from providers within the pack. So we surveyed 107. Well, we surveyed all of our contract providers, had 107 responses with significant positive feedback, with most providers strongly agreeing that our approach to quality monitoring is both supportive, informative, rooted in partnership working and supporting improvement. What I would say is we are one piece of a cog, so we work incredibly closely with the Integrated Care Board, who also commission and monitor the quality of services across Northamptonshire. We draw that together in terms of partnership working at our quality board that I chair, and I also join a system quality board as well, with partners across the integrated care system. So we do work consistently and in partnership as a system with our independent market as well. So happy to pause there, Chair, for questions.
Thank you very much. Is there a capacity issue at the Care Quality Commission? They've got, taken on this huge extra job of looking at all the local authorities as well as all that they do as well. And the fact that you say a lot of these haven't been inspected yet, is that down to their capacity?
I think what the DASH review drew out is that the challenges were multifaceted. So I think CQC attempted to implement significant changes to technology, which were challenging and not implemented at the pace at which they were intended to be. CQC also restructured their inspection teams and formed 2 new roles. So they split the way that they work with providers into assessors who managed notifications and to inspectors that went out and did on-site assessment visits. So they managed their capacity in a different way. And then alongside that, introduced a new methodology to inspect providers. And that mixture of transformation wasn't implemented in the way in which it enabled them to maintain the pace of inspection visits that was required to catch up from a backlog that grew over COVID. So the DASH review was relatively critical of that transformation, and CQC are taking action now to respond to that. So I think we can be hopeful to see improvement, but there are challenges with the approach of the regulator at the moment.
Thank you. David, would you like to come in?
Thank you. And Matt's covered the inspection of providers really well. On the inspection of local authorities, they have struggled with recruitment of inspectors around that. So when the inspection regime, the assurance regime, it is an inspection, but we don't call it an inspection. When the assurance regime for local authorities was put in, there was a request from local authorities to make senior officers available to be part of their inspection process. So Matt is one of those people that we've made available because we think it's valuable for us to be present on those assurance visits and to understand what the focus will be and what some of the key themes that are coming out of them. I think there is a challenge there, but CQC are aware of that and looking at ways that it can manage it. I think getting back into that more proactive element of inspection will probably end up having to be one of those things that they do, bearing in mind how critical that review was. I think it's also important from our own perspective. Matt used to work as a very senior officer in the Care Quality Commission, so it's really helpful having him shaping the work of our commissioning and provider services within the authority as well. Blowing your trumpet for you there, Matt.
Yes, Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just very quick question, if I may. Firstly, congratulations on being that benchmarking and coming down to 35th. Can you just tell us how many organisations is that from? It's just to give me a comparison. You're saying we're down to 35 from 56. How many organisations is that? I was trying to work it out in the slides there, but it's a bit too small for me.
So in terms of local authorities, Councillor McGee, in terms of providers?
Unitary authorities. Because that's what it says here. Compared to other unit authorities, we're now to 35th. How many unit authorities are there so that we get that benchmark, so that we know?
I would have to count them or do a quick Google to tell you, I'm afraid. Thank you.
But it's just to give us that, so we know where we sit in that range. And there was another thing that I wanted to ask about the feedback from the Integrated Care Board. And it's something that, it quite rightly happens on many different quality assurance parts about the monthly meetings and sharing the monthly meetings. But it always starts off with the right people around the table, and then they start sending their subs, etc. But it is key to have the right people around the table, and we need to ensure that that happens so we don't get that feedback right.
The answer to your first question is 62.
62. So we're about 50%.
Yeah.
In the middle, and we're going in the right direction. Congratulations.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. Just before I passed on the other questions, there was one item in there where it's about our own services, and I just, I know the answer, but because I'm closer to it, but just for our other members, the shared lives, would you like to explain a bit about that? Because I don't think it's fully got, out sort of understood what it is.
Yes, certainly. So Shared Lives is a service that we began operating from memory in April of this year. So it was disaggregated from West Northamptonshire, and we registered our own Shared Lives service with the Care Quality Commission. So a description that I would use that hopefully we can make some relation to is fostering, albeit Shared Lives very much has a focus. We're working with adults, so it's strengths-based. We're supporting people who are really independent. It's an alternative offer to other longer-term types of care and support, such as supported living or residential care. So it's the Shared Life service assesses carers and then people that need to draw on care and support would move in with that family and they become part of that individual's family and receive support in that person's home. And shared lives is often a stepping stone to more independent forms of living as well, because people can receive really intensive support and focus on developing skills and independence in somebody's own home. It's a really good alternative offer that we're now able to provide to people that would draw on social care services. So Shared Lives is open to people of all types of ages and needs. So there is an offer there for older people, as before people may need to move into other forms of longer term care and support, and also an offer for younger people who are maybe leaving their family for the first time or leaving the fostering environment for a first time, to go and receive intensive support to develop the skills that they would need to live more independently in the future. So it's really exciting, I think, that we now have our own in-house Shared Lives offer, and it's certainly a focus for us to grow and develop that service as an alternative offer for people across North Northamptonshire.
Yeah, it's been regularly advertised on Facebook. So if anyone is on Facebook, if you like and share, it sort of gets the word out. Because I think it's a really useful. It keeps people in a family setting. Having an elderly person or somebody with a learning disability living in a family. It's a very nice atmosphere for that person. It's also good for the families as well. Yes, Sarah.
I think also to add, where we've got children that are in foster arrangements, we're also able to transfer those whole families over into our local authority. So that consistency for children coming into young adult is really good in my view.
Yep. Okay. Any questions from anyone else or comments? Yep, Councillor McGee.
Just on a Shared Lives one, I did see that and heard about it not long ago actually. How many have we got just now, and how many people have we got ready for waiting for families? And can I ask one more on it? How do we support their families both financially and if they need help for respite, etc.?
So I can take the support. I don't know, David, if you know offhand figures.
It's around about 30 people are supported through Shared Lives, which from my perspective is a bit too low. So we have been actively recruiting more Shared Lives carers. I think 2 have been registered so far this year. Doesn't sound an awful lot, but sometimes you can find that actually that's quite significant. If you bear in mind that we had seen no increases in Shared Lives carers for about the previous 4 years whilst the service was hosted. So there's been some real active movement around that. We're also doing work with Shared Lives Plus to look at our offer and how we can expand that. So really looking at how we can make it more flexible and are there different sorts of models. And as well as promoting it, if anyone in your family is really interested in becoming a Shared Lives carer, because it is a really valuable and can really support maybe parents of school-age children to have an active income because of the care payments that we make to them, to actually be in employment without having to go out to work. So there's some real opportunities if they want to get into that caring sector to get that experience. You do have to share your home though.
So if I build on that, so another part of your question, Councillor, was the support for Shared Lives carers. So if I start with the assessment process, so anybody watching live, this is my sales pitch as well as to why you should apply to be a Shared Lives carer. So the first thing is you don't need to have worked in care services before. The Shared Lives assessment process is very much based on values, behaviours and the opportunity that you can offer to an individual to be part of your family life and your home. So our team can provide the training that people will need, so don't let that put anybody off applying to be a Shared Lives carer. So there is, it sounds very formal, an assessment process, so people are assessed before they can become a Shared Lives carer, but that's very much working with people to think about what impact is it going to have on you and your family and your household if you begin to support somebody within your home, because of course it will change what you do, it will change what happens in your home on a day-to-day basis. There'll be somebody else living with you, and it's working with people to help them understand and really think about that and the implications of it. Once an individual is approved as a Shared Lives carer, They have a shared lives officer, so an NNC employee that works in that shared lives service allocated to them, and that individual work really closely with them, visit them generally on a monthly basis to provide support, advice and monitoring of how they're supporting the person that's living with them. And it's very much a partnership and supportive approach to enabling shared lives carers to really enjoy it and get the most out of that role and provide really good outcomes to the person that they're supporting. Shared lives carers are paid by us for the role that they complete. However, they are classed as self-employed workers, so they receive tax concessions, the same tax concessions that a foster carer would receive as well, and gives a really good and flexible opportunity to work alongside other family or caring commitments that individuals may have. Shared lives carers also receive short breaks, so respite, where the individual that's living with them can go and stay with either another shared lives carer, or we may fund a supported holiday or something like that, for example. But shared lives carers do get a break from their role as well to enable them to do that shared lives caring role incredibly well. I've worked in a shared life service as a shared lives officer. Sarah's led a shared life service before. It is an incredibly rewarding role for shared lives carers that are offering that support in their own home. It's a great service to work in and be part of, and provides really good outcomes for people.
Yeah, yes, Councillor Shacklock.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just an observation, really, that I caught the tail end of something on the national news this morning, where they're asking families if they've got a spare bedroom, would they consider taking on an extra child? Is that the same thing that you're talking of, really?
So that would be fostering, but I suppose the principle remains the same for the shared lives offer, albeit you'd be supporting an adult who would have, some degree of care need. But yes, the principle's the same.
It's also a two-way street with, sometimes an older person coming to live in this who's got experience of life, and, when the children there, they can sort of interact so that the children understand about older people as well. So I think, there's a two-way street, really. So, any other comments? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Matt. And, it's... We really, I think when I first came into this role, I was quite surprised at the amount of support that we give to the whole framework and the organisations, private organisations. But if they don't exist, then we won't have anywhere, for people to go. So we look after them, we help them, we make sure that they're giving a good service to our residents. But that is, part of our role. And the fact that we've increased from 56 to 35, that is incredible. So, well done for that, and thank you very much for your hard work. So I don't think we're just sort of noting that. I'm just trying to find my agenda again now. Trying to keep two things open at once. So we move now on to the Executive Forward Plan. David.
Thank you, Chair. So as part of the pack, you've got the published Executive Forward Plan, which is, as always, a snapshot as it was on the day it was published. I think you'll note for November there was 11 items. I think we're up to 22 as things stand. I've not shaken the tree yet to see what else is going to fall out for November, so we could be in for quite a long meeting. So there's a few items that aren't contained on the published pack there. I'm just having a look to see if there's anything of relevance to this particular EAP coming forward, but with the timescales involved, stuff that would be coming to November's executive wouldn't make it to this EAP anyway. So because the next meeting of this EAP isn't until December, so you'd be really looking at things for sort of January executive to actually make a difference. So you've got Northamptonshire Children's Trust inter-authority agreement coming in January, private sector housing assistance policy on disabled facilities grants, the climate change strategy, and then we're into February, into the budget setting period. and then I've got one item through for March at the moment, which is the Keyways Housing Allocation Scheme, which is sort of, that's a sort of cross-cutting thing that could come to this and maybe prosperous as well. So, yeah, that's the forward plan.
The Active Communities Strategic Framework, which is due to come to December, is already on our agenda, isn't it, for this meeting? At the end, there's some items that are already pre-planned.
Yes, the Active Communities Strategic Framework is due to go to the executive meeting on the 19th of December, Chair.
But on the forward plan for this
meeting,
committee,
yeah.
it's also down as the 29th of November.
29th of November, yeah.
So that one is already... are there any others there that anyone thinks, you know, we ought to have a look at, or just for noting? No? Okay. Well, David.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder if it may be helpful for the EAP to have sight of the budget proposals, particularly for the services that fall under, say, we'll be in that second stage of scrutiny by then, but it may be helpful for you to understand what might be the implications for some of the services that the EAP is responsible for sort of helping to influence policy on.
We've got two items on the November one. Would January that be too late for the budget one?
I don't know, it wouldn't be too late because the final budget proposals come through to February, but it will just give us, it may help shape your thinking for, well, what are some of the things that we might want to look at in the EAP for the next municipal year?
Yeah, seems reasonable. Okay, everyone happy with that? Any other items that anyone feels we need to bring onto the EAP agenda, either from the forward plan or you know, on our own forward plan as well? No? Okay, well, thank you very much. I think that's then the end of our meeting, and thank you very much for your attendance and your participation. Thank you, and thank you to the officers.